the European Central Bank has reports saying Bitcoin doesn't have any value and are just, they're writing about it that it's fucking stupid. This is the biggest technological battle that could ever happen. If you're against that, well, good luck. Try to be anti-Bitcoin. See what happens. Just move everything I own from a system that is not designed for me, where I'm never really even the true owner of what I think I own, what is my wealth. I adopted this better money. I cannot be taken advantage of. AI can probably not scale without Bitcoin. But I do believe AI will usher in some sort of age of abundance. But how do you measure that prosperity?
If you could orange pill anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
This is a corny answer perhaps, but fucking he needs to understand. He needs to understand what this is. He's so close. He's so close.
What is real? How do you define real?
You can't jump into cash. Cash is trash. What do? You get out.
Bram Kanstein is the host of the Bitcoin for Millennials podcast and an advisor to early riders. Bram, welcome to the BitcoinMatrix podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm really good, man. Like I just said, this was a long time coming, so I'm happy to be on. So I appreciate it. And I think first off, I just wanted to give you a shout out and also an instruction to people watching. Like I think you deserve more subscribers. You have been a big inspiration on my journey and like conversations that you've had. And it was actually Bob Burnett on one of your episodes that said something that actually triggered me into starting my own podcast. So I just wanted to share that with you before we start, and also share that with people listening, that I think, like, if you're into Bitcoin and you think it should exist in the world, you should do something about it, and I always say, like, the action is the inspiration, and you have been a part of my inspiration, so I just want to share that with you.
I really appreciate that. I remember you reached out to me on August 28th, 2023.
Here, so that's that's how long we're waiting.
So this is awesome. We got to actually meet in person for a few minutes in, I think it was Vegas.
Yeah. Super fun. How did you? What did you think about that? Like, that was my first time going to that conference, which was mind-boggling to see that many people. Like, I've been to the Amsterdam conference that is like 3,000-4,000 people. I've been to Madeira, it's 2,000 people. That's already a lot of people, right? Like, and that's really when I saw, hey, there's people in real life that are also interested in this, right? It's not just people on the internet, but like Vegas was insane just to see that amount of people that are all into Bitcoin and wanting to learn. And it was fun. It was fun meeting.
Oh my gosh, that was what is that? 25,000 people inside of Vegas. So it's, the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world on steroids, because you're in the biggest fiat city in the world.
Yeah, I could. This was really the meme. The European mind cannot comprehend. That was literally me. I think on day 3, I had to, at like 1 p.m., I had to go to my hotel room, just lay in my bed for 2 hours. Like, my mind couldn't process all the insanity anymore. But I think it's just cool to see where Bitcoin came from, right? Like, it was first very obscure. Now it's this. I don't even know how to call it in Vegas. I think it's a strange place to do this, but it's actually also very funny that it's like in a peak fiat place, right? So there's some humor in that as well. But again, like I said, it's just very cool to see a lot of people that are into Bitcoin, and I think that's also something that I talk about a lot. Like, this is such a big idea, man. Like, this is actually what Bob Burnett said in that conversation with you that inspired me so much. Like, yeah, this is the biggest thing that you can spend your time on. And when he said that, I just realized, yeah, I'm going to think about this for the rest of my life. It's not that like in 5 years, I'm going to be like, well, that was it. Like, I'm not going to pay attention anymore, because I think this is something that will deserve my attention for the rest of my life. Right. So why not try to contribute to that? And I think that is also what, I really think people before me that also had a podcast like you and before, like that is what we're doing. Like every year or every few so months, there's someone that is like, okay, I'm gonna do something creatively. I'm gonna try to reach people with my own voice and my own thoughts around Bitcoin. And I think that is just so incredibly cool to see that is growing, and it's also very rewarding to be a little part of that, right? Like walking around on the conference, I had so many people that were like, hey, I listen to your stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just a dude talking about Bitcoin, right? Like it's just very rewarding and fun that it helps people along the way. And that's also why I think it's just so important to for me to give that back to you, because I know what an inspiration that could be to, and motivation to just continue to do that, right? So yeah, super cool to see where we're at now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we just need more and more voices, especially as the asset class gets bigger and bigger, and people like hearing from voices they relate to. So I want to talk about, maybe where you came from. What was your background before Bitcoin, and what was your rabbit hole story?
Yeah, so I've always been, I just think like an internet geek. Like I think we got internet when I was like 12, 13. And yeah, just started computering. I always called it computering, and like being on the internet, trying to figure out what was going on. Like how can I use this? I don't know. I just always had a natural interest in that, just curious about that. And I think only later I learned what I really enjoyed is basically finding new ideas. Like what are people spending their time on, right? Like what are they inspired to do? And then especially in like the digital realm, right? So yeah, what kind of products, services, startups, apps, what are people building? And so I remember when being like 15, 16, I was very deep into Napster, right? Like just downloading songs. I had like these towers with CD burners and, these empty cases and like stickers for on the CDs. And I like made my own mixtapes and I sold them in school. And then from the money I earned, we threw parties and just trying to be a little entrepreneurial with some sort of internet knowledge, right? I felt like I had an edge because no one else was creating the mixtapes. I had a friend who did like illegal games and selling that, like the first GTA and stuff like that. And we were just always like messing around on the internet. And I think that never really went away. I think I'm still doing that. And it's just really fun to see not only how the internet grew, but how I have a similar feeling with Bitcoin, like how big it became. Like it felt fun in the beginning, like it's fun, it's nice, it's something quirky, new, whatever, and I'm just fucking around. And then in some way, shape, or form, it became super big, right? And I think I see a lot of similarities with that because also, yeah, when you were online in the beginning, there wasn't really that much also like information, right? And that just grew and grew and grew. And what we just mentioned, like with the podcast, I think, and that's then maybe the jump to my Bitcoin story. Like I found Bitcoin in 2014. I had a friend send me a video where just like an animation video that explained Bitcoin just factually, like technically. And it was sent to me by a friend who said like, hey, I think this is something for you. And I instantly saw it in a sense that I thought, okay, this is money for the internet. That makes a lot of sense. I always saw the internet as kind of like the democratization of information. Like I could read, stuff that someone on the other side of the world was writing. Like I could get their thoughts, and that was really, of course, like a profound shift from just reading a book, right? Where you can obviously also read the thoughts of someone else, but this was kind of instant. So I remember like back in that time, so let's say 2006, 2005, whatever, like I was already following people that were kind of like blogging or writing on a website before I think it was called a blog even. And yeah, I always thought there was something magical. Like it felt like you could learn more than whatever was provided to you in school, right? That was very confining. You just had a certain amount of books, etc. Like I sound like an old person, but it's not that long ago, right? And so he sent me that video. I was like, okay, this is a money for the internet. And back then, like I was a student. I thought, okay, I saw these charts number go up. Obviously, I thought, okay, this is going to make me super rich. So I day traded for like 3 months with 2 friends. And I think that after 3 months, I remember laying in bed one day and just hallucinating, like seeing the charts in the room. And I was like, whoa, okay, trading is not for me. I'm too emotional to be a trader. So I just held on to it and also looked at a lot of other things, right? Like I think in 2014, I even did a presentation on Litecoin at a big bank, for example. And I thought Litecoin was the better Bitcoin, right? And just, from there on, just starting to follow it. And I think at the same time, so 2013, 14, I got out of college and I started working in, the internet startup space, basically. So my background for the last 10, 12 years has been in working with and also building digital products, startups. And so I've seen a lot of ideas and I tried out a lot of digital products. So eventually, I think I kind of created this taste for, understanding how a digital product, should work, how to make it a business, go to market, like all these things. And that's been kind of the central thing central topic that I followed. And so I started at like an investment type of company. I worked at a big media firm. Like I said, I worked at a bank, at two banks actually. I did a lot of my own ideas, failed at a lot, sold a few along the way. Just again, messing around on the internet. And along the way, there was always this Bitcoin thing. And at one point, and this is always what I share, I bought between 100 and 300, but I sold everything at 4,000. And that was amazing. Obviously felt amazing because I was still a student. Looking back, I just didn't get it, so I was happy at the time, but obviously there was a bad decision because I now have way less than before. But I also think that eventually is part of it, right? Like when you fumble, you get humble, basically. So, when Ethereum came out, I found that at $7, dove into that, the whole ICO stuff, tried out NFTs, all these things. But along the way, this Bitcoin thing still never really left, right? And so I do think I got distracted with all the tech stuff and like I said, the NFT, crypto, whatever stuff. And then just slowly realizing that after I paid attention to crypto for 2.5 years, that I didn't really see anything being built. So there was a lot of stuff going on that, this NFT stuff, whatever, you could say there is some sort of value, like entertainment, whatnot, trade. But I didn't see any products being built. And that was always the premise of crypto, right? Like this is DeFi, new world, blah, blah, blah. And then I don't really know what triggered me, but I just slowly got back into Bitcoin. One trigger was when I worked at this bank. This was 2017, 18. I was into Bitcoin. I had a mortgage. I was 30, and I thought okay, I know what I'm doing. And then I had a colleague tell me, "Did you know that the money in the bank is not yours?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then we had lunch. This was during a lunch. And we talked for an hour, and he explained fractional reserve banking and all that stuff. And I just remember walking away from that conversation feeling like an idiot. Okay, I think I'm doing all these things, but basically I have no clue. And I think that was a big trigger for me to slowly but surely, and definitely over the last 5 years, going super deep on the economical and financial dimensions of Bitcoin, which only then showed me, the reason of existence for Bitcoin, which when you like the internet or when you like technology, and this is also what I think is so funny, from people in Silicon Valley, for example, that still don't understand Bitcoin, that is just one angle or one dimension of probably 10 to 12, 15 dimensions, perhaps, that you can look at Bitcoin, basically, right? And I think that is also what I saw in my career. You can build whatever you want with the current technology, but it's about what you build. And in order to figure out what you should build, you should understand the problem or the need that you're fulfilling for the people that you're building your product or service for, right? And so it was actually quite funny that I knew how that mechanism worked, but only until I kind of like dove into the economic and financial dimensions of Bitcoin. It was when I really saw that this is a very special thing, right? Like the birth of a new money, the monetization of a new money, the attempt to change the technology we use for money on a global scale is probably the biggest endeavor for any technology, right? And that's also why you should have this long time frame, because it's going to take a long time before more people see it, right? Especially because the whole enchantment of fiat money is also extremely strong, and people don't want to see that they have a problem, let alone see a possible solution. And so that was one of my triggers, to just go down deeper. And then, slowly but surely traded all of the crypto nonsense stuff I had, just basically back into Bitcoin, and, started watching podcasts, reading books. And at one moment when I realized, okay, I can basically just move everything I own from a system that is not designed for me, that I could never truly understand, where I'm never really even the true owner of what I think I own, what is my wealth. Yeah, I can just move that to a system that is objectively better, that I can actually verify for myself, of which all the information is publicly available. And be like, have a seat in the stadium to watch this monetization of this new money basically unfold. And when I saw someone tweeting that, like, if you think Bitcoin is going to be something, you should have a seat in the stadium, I was like, yeah, that's what I actually should do. And that's basically when I moved. And I think from there on, I just got obsessed with it, basically. So yeah, I mean, I wake up and I think about Bitcoin, and I talk about Bitcoin every day. And then like 2 years ago, actually, like watching your podcast with Bob saying that, I was like, yeah, I want to contribute to this thing, but what should I do? And I think in the same time period, I had different calls with people I knew from the internet that were into Bitcoin, and I had some moments where I was like, oh yeah, it would have been fun to just record this and share this with other people. And in that same period, I had conversations with generational peers, about money, Bitcoin, and stuff like that, and they weren't seeing it. Like, smart people that I admired weren't seeing it. And I was like, yeah, well, that is so crazy, right? Because it's bringing me so much. And I've also been a lurker quite some time on like the Millennials subreddit. And like all the things that those people describe there, all the nihilism, like not having children, all the struggles and all these things, I always thought like, I don't have that. And I think a big attribute to that is, or a big part of that can be attributed to adopting Bitcoin and having a certain positivity towards the future. And so that's kind of like the moment where I decided, okay, I'm not going to be a lurker or a consumer anymore. I really want to try to contribute to this thing. And then, that's kind of how the podcast started. And that kind of amplified my obsession, because now I cannot really stop thinking and talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get into it. I want to talk about millennials, or just generational kind of perspective on Bitcoin. Let's maybe talk about why are the millennials so nihilistic right now? And obviously we're painting in broad strokes, but...
I think from what I now see, it's that, our parents told us a certain story because that was their story, right? Like how they came of age and went through life and got a job and a house and a mortgage and a relationship and a family, etc. And then, like that path that has been sold to us, I just say sold with air quotes. Yeah, that doesn't really exist anymore, right? And so people are running into that and not really understanding why that isn't possible anymore. And I think that is probably one of the biggest crimes, in a sense, that people are now very confused, actually, right? Like you see a lot of people are pointing to a lot of other things outside of themselves, from the greedy billionaires and the corporations or the systemic something, but they don't understand that it's the money. And I don't blame them, right? Like I just shared, like it took me a lot of time to figure out what the actual problem was, and also realizing and accepting that I never really had a clue about money, which I think especially in a Western country, if you grow up in a Western country, especially if you grew up as a millennial in a Western country, you probably grew up in the best time to ever grow up of any person that ever lived, right? And there was always security and food and a roof over your head and entertainment and whatnot. And it was probably, yeah, like I said, the best time to ever grow up. And so having that in your youth, never even having to think about money, thinking that you have a certain path that you can follow in your life and then end up happy, to then realize probably in your late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, that isn't really possible anymore, I think is why I would like to focus on millennials, because especially in this age range, like let's say late 20s to late 30s, for example, this is where people make the big life decisions, right? Like where to settle down or to even settle down or to have kids or do a certain thing in their career. Like these are, I think, quite some pivotal years, or at least years for pivotal decisions for people. And that is something that I think is exciting, but also brings a certain amount of self-awareness, responsibility, perhaps a bit anxiety about like, am I making the right decision, right? And when I read Safe Dean's, the Bitcoin standard, right, or when he talks about low and high time preference and talking about having, everyone has a certain natural anxiety in their lives because you never really know when you're going to die, right? So the future is uncertain anyway. But the fact that we have a higher uncertainty than what we basically naturally need, I would say, comes from the fact that the money is losing its value continuously. So it becomes harder and harder to actually plan for the future, to actually make those, pivotal decisions in your life. And I think when I saw that for myself, at least, I just realized, you cannot really blame people that they are angry or confused or disappointed with not being able to follow a certain path that they thought they would follow. But it's way deeper and way more fundamental than everyone basically realizes. And I think that's kind of why I want to focus on my generational peers, especially because, like in the previous generations, the boomers had real estate and Gen X had the index funds, the S&P and stuff like that. I think every generation has a certain opportunity to get ahead or secure their future in a certain way. And I think Bitcoin is that for our generation, especially also because we lived through this analog to digital age, right? Like we are, of course, Gen X had that too, partially, but we are kind of like the last ones that actually went fully through that, and so I think we're actually primed to understand Bitcoin, right? Like the connection of Bitcoins being digital, but having a connection to the physical world through proof of work and stuff. I just think this is the asset that we can use to secure our future, or at least prepare for the future, have a certain lifeboat or something that can help us lower our uncertainty towards the future that is being heightened by the fact that fiat money loses its value all the time. And so that's why I just hope to reach more millennials and tell them about the problem they have that they don't really realize. And I think maybe to add to that, like my mother is almost retiring within like a year, and she told me that she's kind of unsure if the money is going to be there of her retirement, right? And that, I think, is just very saddening that is where she's at with her head, right? Like the fact that she worked for like 45 years, and then when you're finishing up that career or your working years, that you're not really sure if you have your retirement. But the fact that she's feeling that actually assured me that there's definitely not going to be a retirement for me, right? And I think that's also an extra motivation to tell other people about that. I mean, last week I sat down with a friend who got a letter from like his pension fund that his employer, puts money in, or that he contributes to. So he works in tech, makes like 120,000 euros a year or something, and then he got this letter with this overview, and then it said, so he's 33. It said, if you work for this company until your retirement age, which is like 65, 66, so 32, 33 years, you're going to get like 37,000 euros per year or something. That's your retirement. And then we looked at each other like 37,000 euros a year. Like, who can live on 37,000 euros a year in my country? That's going to be very difficult, let alone in 32 or 33 years, right? And so seeing that, I thought it was interesting that this is actually staring people in the face. Like, this future uncertainty is actually communicated to you, but no one really understands what that means. So I think not only mitigating the debasement of money today, right, or every month or every year currently is a problem, but thinking about how you're going to survive basically in 30 years is also a problem. Like, your parents never thought about that. Like, the millennial parents never thought about that, because they had that kind of like expectation of having a pension. It was also, of course, kind of very early in that entire system. So they had some sort of security towards the future. But I think for millennials, that is really gone. But people are super unaware of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's interesting when you use Bitcoin as a unit of account. I've had peers who made decisions where, their pension or, their 401k sort of representative has offered to buy them out. Instead of let's paying you $36,000 a year in 15 years, we'll give you $150,000 now. And if you think in Bitcoin math, you say, wow, I can get that money now. And you think about the properties of taking ownership of your money and being able to use it if there's an emergency. The present value is 150K, but you say, someone maybe who's doing different calculus says, well, I don't know how long I'm going to live. And if I take the money now, I might spend it. I might not have it. I might not invest it well. I might speculate. It might be gone. But, 15, 20 years from now, they'll give me, $3,000 a month. And when you start thinking about in terms of, when you think about Bitcoin math is also thinking about inflation and what is that going to be worth in the future, and what are you going to be able to buy with that? And how long are you going to have to like live beyond the, if it starts kicking off 3,000 a month in 15 years, well, you're going to have to live 30 years to break even.
Yeah.
And you don't have any liquidity. And then you go through sort of like the last 3 years and you go, wow, like you could have done a 2, 3, 4, 5x with Bitcoin. You can even start thinking about that math and give yourself $3,000 a month now, or, whatever it might be. But I wonder which generations, are most poised to kind of be receptive to Bitcoin and not receptive. Like, and I'm, generalizing here, but like boomers, you think, okay, well, they probably have the most wealth, so they feel the problem the least. They feel most prepared for or defensive to defend against these problems. And then I think of the Dave Collins sort of paradox where he's thinking, well, to kind of get enough in to make a difference in my life would amount too much. Like, if the more you're worth, the more 1 to 10% actually is in dollars. Right. And like, wow, I would never put that much into something I don't understand, or, you kind of see, you see sort of the dilemma there, and, but they have the most opportunity to flick off some wealth and reallocate and not have it maybe big deal and take advantage of it. Right. And then you think of young people, I would think the advantages they have, so they don't have maybe the wealth that the boomers could reallocate, but the advantages are, I think too, is like, they tend to be more tech friendly and early adopters. And I think Bitcoin is not, a lot of the ways we look at what Bitcoin could do is a blend of tech and sort of, sort of cryptographic properties. But you're not, I don't think of it as tech, right? But you could see how people might be really interested, especially maybe even the broader thing, crypto, move fast, break things. I could build things here. It's new. It's interesting. And then I think the other one they would think is sort of like young people, and I'm broad, I would even include myself in this, but it's like a little bit of like, fuck you money, not in the sense of like having a lot of money to say fuck you, but like, hey, I'm not going to be a part of your system. I don't like the way you do things. I hate banks. I don't want my money at the bank. Like I thought, you would think a lot of people would think that's cool. So again, now you don't have to like put a lot of money. I don't have a lot of money. I have $500, but I don't want it at the fucking bank.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. What has been your impression to make? Are millennials really interested? Are they not interested?
It's funny because I think eventually, just when I look at my IRL, my real life, I do now have like some Bitcoiner friends, but it's not like the people that I knew before that I would consider friends or just close acquaintances that now see how my life is now that I've adopted Bitcoin. The fact that I'm spending already 2 years making a podcast twice a week on it, and now for a year almost only doing that. It's not like they're calling and saying like, hey, can we just chat for 30 minutes? Like, can you explain to me why you're spending so much time on this? You know what I mean? But they do share stuff online about everything they think is fucked up in the world and like all the problems and all, like, you know what I mean? Like pointing at all the shit that is stupid and should be fixed and whatever. And at the same time, not really looking for a solution, while there is someone in their vicinity that isn't really bothered with all that stuff on a daily basis, right? So I find that interesting in a sense that even though the problems have become more apparent. I mean, if I just run to the supermarket to get some dinner in the evening and maybe some breakfast or whatever, because I didn't do like big groceries, yeah, that's easily like 50 euros, which in my mind should be like 20 or 19, right? Or whenever I go to a restaurant and I don't know, a cheeseburger with fries or whatever, like in my mind, something like that, or like a steak and fries, whatever, is like 18 money units in my mind. But I have to pay like 28 or 32 now, right? And so I cannot imagine that other people don't see that. Maybe I see that because I'm thinking about or like studying this stuff. It could as well be some sort of bias there, but I just cannot imagine that people don't feel, at least, that everything is getting more expensive, everything is getting weirder, quality of products, stuff is going down, a lot of stuff is happening in society, people aren't having children, like stuff like that. I cannot imagine that people don't see that. So, but my conclusion is that just a lot of people don't. So although I'm trying to reach more millennials, and of course, like I have people that react or send me a message or whatever. Like I see I reach millennials in the analytics, but just in my vicinity, for example, I don't really see it. But at the other end, I do think every generation has a problem. I thought it was nice you started there. Like I think the boomers. I've seen a few videos, for example. Now in California, I also saw a video of someone in my country, like, but I think in the US it's a bit different. Like, but this guy bought a house, paid it off like 40 years ago, and he's 73 and he still has to work like 30 hours a week to pay for the property tax, right? And so even those people that had a certain picture of retirement are not living that picture, right? And so I think if you are Gen X, so a little below that, you actually are on your way to retirement. And when you see all these things getting more expensive, and yeah, maybe sometimes seeing an overview of what you're going to get, right, or supposedly going to get, I think actually Gen X would probably be faster aware of the problem, because they're going to do that math that you mentioned to then realize, okay, I'm not really sure if I can make it. And I think they have the biggest predicament, in a sense that they have the shortest time to actually try to fix it or prepare themselves for that what's coming. And then for the millennials, like I said, I don't think there's any retirement for us. We are in the prime age in terms of career and earning money, although that is also increasingly becoming more difficult, right? Like just economy wise, but also, with AI coming and stuff like that. So I do think that as a millennial, you conceptually have a lot of time, but you need to pay attention today. Like, I think you have 10 years max to fix this for yourself. And then Gen Z, I'd say they have more time in life, but I think they unfortunately also have those 10 years, right? So imagine you are 16, 17, 18, let's say 18, you're out of high school, or let's say you're almost done with college, right? You're graduating. Let's say you're early 20s. Then most people graduated for the idea of having a certain job that is not going to exist in 2 or 3 years. That combined with, just the whole economic outlook. And I think we talk a lot. I mean, I'm in Europe, but we talk a lot about the US, obviously, because it's world reserve currency. Like, I think if the US goes downhill, the rest also goes downhill, or at least there's a lot of chaos, right? But I think a lot of same stuff is happening in Europe, in the sense that, the economic outlook is pretty grim and or bad. And I'm also very interested in seeing what AI is going to do with productivity, right? And just like the replacement of people, etc. And so when you are 18, 19, 20, early 20s, right? I think you have a very tough future ahead, but you have the same time window as the millennials, who are perhaps a bit more experienced also within their career, work, life in general. Yeah, you have that similar time frame, I think, like 2033, something like that. So I'd say 8 years to try to fix that. So again, I just think the problem is very urgent, but it's very hard to tell that to people, right? Like, it's very hard to like saying, you're not paying attention or you're doing something wrong, like is a bad pitch, right? Like, that is not an inviting thing to say. And so I think explaining what is money, basically. So shout out to Breedlove also. I think also big inspiration along the way, and someone who's educated me a lot with his conversations. Like, if you don't understand the money is broken, you never get to Bitcoin being a solution, if that makes sense, right? Like, you do not pitch a solution, a somewhat technological solution, right, or a fairly technological solution, to someone who doesn't even understand what the problem is, in a more, I would say, philosophical way than just everything gets more expensive. Yeah, everything is more expensive. I'm getting fucked because my government or this person or that greedy corporation or whatever. Like, then it's easy to point a finger. Whereas I think if you understand it a little bit more philosophically, you can also, I think, grasp the concept of taking energy away from the current fiat system and moving to Bitcoin. Just you move to another money, like millions of people have done before you, not only with Bitcoin, but also in history, right? Like, people moving from a bad to a better money is not something new. That is actually something that people are searching for constantly, right? So I don't think that is hard to understand, but there needs to be some sort of trigger for people to actually be open to receiving the message that, in a nice way, that they don't understand what money is. Like, I didn't understand what money was.
When it comes to Bitcoin, the rules are simple. Run your own node, hold your own keys, and protect your seed phrase. That's where microseed comes in. Unlike bulky backups, microseed is stamped onto a tiny steel washer. Fireproof, waterproof, and so small you can carry it anywhere or hide it in plain sight. Go to microseed.io and use the code MATRIX for a discount on your order.
Yeah, I think on the what is money part, like, that's a way to appeal to anybody on the philosophical bent. But I think, the broader, I remember, when I graduated college and, I was on a pretty corporate America kind of funnel where, I moved from New York City, where I was a Big Four financial statement auditor with Wall Street sort of clients, and I moved to San Francisco, and outside, and where I had much more like technology kind of clients. But all my friends just coincidentally, they had also moved to San Francisco, and you think, okay, wow, like this is getting, I go out to dinner and it's X amount of political units and that's expensive, or I like that and I got to eliminate this. Maybe I won't get the coffee in the morning so I can afford that. And you're playing these games to get, what you want in life. You pay rent, you lease or buy a car or whatever. But then you're like, you see a friend maybe who their boyfriend or girlfriend is an administrative assistant at Amazon, and they got, they were early as an admin, and they retire. And you see sort of these things, and if you see something like that, they could say, hey, don't you want to live like me? I've been on this, early startup program where I joined a startup and I made a lot of money. Don't you want to be like me? And you could say, well, I'm an accountant. I can't just, maybe I could be an accountant at a startup, right? And you start figuring, well, I have to work. You figure, well, they drew an ace, right? Lucky them. And I think a lot of people look at Bitcoiners that way. And they say, okay, well, they got lucky. They either got in early and they were able to speculate and capitalize, and that's good for them. I'm not in tech. I'm not going to move to San Francisco and try to be in a startup. I'm a plumber in Boston, and I'll just continue to build my business. Or, I'm an accountant and I have to work really hard to get a great raise, and maybe I will change companies so that I can get an even bigger raise. And I'll give up my seniority here in the cushy corner office, but I'll make more money. Or some people are like, I'll stay here so I can keep the corner office and the cushy schedule and work from home 3 days a week. And I won't take the different job. And they're playing the game that way. And they're saying, you got lucky. That's, that worked out for you. And so maybe as a, millennial, like, how do you think, here Bitcoin, if you look at the price per unit that Bitcoin is generally quoted at, is $120,000.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
A young person's like, I've missed that. It sounds like a lot, and in different currencies, it might even sound like more. So I would think that that's probably just a hard, even just entree to people.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I think the unit bias is something that is very strong and very difficult. But I like the example, right? Like, people think, and I also thought Bitcoin is an investment, but it's not, right? Like it is not an investment. It's a way to store your wealth, just like gold is a way to store your wealth. You don't need one big gold bar. You can have gold coins, right? There's different quantities of gold, and Bitcoin is nothing different in that sense. But I think that the fact that you cannot touch it, right? So I can buy and touch a gold coin. I think for a lot of people that is something that they deem valuable, right? I think you can also argue that is part of the fiat enchantment, that only something you can touch has value, right? That is something that is used a lot. So you cannot touch it. It is digital. It is somewhat technical to understand it if you truly want to own it yourself, right? So there are some barriers. But also that idea of it being an investment, being too late, like that is what I mean also with this nihilistic kind of like zero-sum game thinking. That is also a symptom of fiat, right? Like that is the whole way the fiat money system is set up. There are opportunities for certain people along the way in whatever system that they operate to take advantage of their position, corrupt themselves to a degree, and then have an advantage over others in a system. And I think that is shown in different layers of society in general, is just this whole idea of I win, you lose, there is no cooperation, etc. Which of course we both know that in Bitcoin that is kind of flipped. Jeff Booth once said to me that Bitcoin is about cooperative competitiveness, and I really like that. Like everyone consents to the rules of this protocol for money, but there's still a free market to create value and earn that money, basically. So together we make sure the value of the money stays as promised, as in one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. But then still, yeah, there's a free market where you basically battle, right, over who can earn more than others. Like that is always something, right? But I think because the quality of fiat money is so bad, it actually incentivizes people to take advantage of other people, right? And so I think that's where that zero sum thinking comes from, and I agree that is something that makes people dismiss Bitcoin and get into stonks or shit coins, or thinking it could be faster to get rich, right, or solve their problems by actually taking more risk. And I think that's just an interesting thing to think about in general. Like, okay, I think I need to be quicker and take more risk, so I'm going to do something that I also don't know a lot about, right? Like a lot of people in crypto, when I sometimes click on these spaces on X, right? And just the level is very low, I have to say, you know, where people are super uncertain about what they're getting into and all these things, right? And I talked to American Hodl yesterday. He said, like, if you come across a person in crypto who is very sure of himself, do not believe them. They are using the people that are insecure for their own grift. And I agree. You know, like it's a wild west, but it's attractive to people because they do feel somewhere that they need it, right? They need to have this one big shot to get out of debt or become rich or whatever they think they're gonna end up. And the paradox with Bitcoin, I think, is that you need to do the work upfront. So there's some uncomfortable work, right? Like, for example, realizing that you have no clue about money and that you were just, you know, running around in this system and doing things for money and looking at your banking app, seeing a number and thinking that's actually a real thing and stuff like that, right? Just realizing you have no clue. Okay, why don't I have a clue? Well, it's because other people lied to me, or they never told to me what money is. They never explained to me what money is, how it works, that money isn't equal for everyone, and all these things. But then after you get through that, when you do the work, so literally spend time to understand, then do more like the internal work of being okay that you were lied to, then you are rewarded, because then you see something that a lot of other people don't. And I think that actually is what frees your mind, or at least in my journey. I'm not bothered with all the fiat money shit anymore because I chose another money, right? And so I think it is very interesting to experience that after doing that work, that mental freedom comes, which eventually that is what life is about, I think, right? So I always say this too, like, it doesn't really matter how much Bitcoin you have, the more, the better perhaps, but I don't really think so, actually. It's just about, I adopted this better money. I cannot be taken advantage of anymore. I'm actually in control of my wealth, however much that is. And I decided to do that in my own conscious way. I decided to adopt a money that no one can fuck with, basically, that no one can take advantage of to my detriment, right? And just getting to that point, really understanding that you're thinking for yourself, that you're choosing for yourself, and perhaps, you know, for a lot of people, also their children's future and etc. I think that is actually what Bitcoin, how Bitcoin basically empowers you, that you made that decision and that you can actually do that, right? And whatever question you have, whatever thing you want to learn about Bitcoin now as compared to 12 years ago, there is an infinite amount of places that you can learn about this, right? And I love these examples of Bitcoin gets audited every 10 minutes and the Fed has never been audited, right? And we know how many Bitcoin are where and all these things. And at the Bank of England, they have a conference saying like, oh no, you should trust us, we still have the gold and stuff like that. Like, when you start seeing that, I think that strengthens your conviction in the fact that the idea of Bitcoin, a trustless, global, decentralized, you know, finite supply money is just a great idea, because you start seeing the nonsense of everything that fiat money creates, or all this stuff that emanates from the quality of fiat money. It's only bad, and I think what emanates from Bitcoin is almost all beautiful, right? Like the whole idea of this cooperative competitiveness versus zero-sum game. Like think about that for a future. Like what does a future look like run on Bitcoin? It's people working together trying to figure it out. And I think that for me is kind of like what humanity should be about. Like no one really knows what's going on, so we'd rather work together to figure this out. And if there's a money that can actually help us get there, I think that is a solid choice to at least attempt to see if that can exist in the world.
The two things I think about there is like Bitcoin Tina was what kind of brought this to my attention. You know, most people they trade against each other and not so much against their future selves. In fact, they even trade against their prior selves a lot. Oh, I should have bought earlier. I'm not going to buy now. I can never get those gains back. And so you think, okay, I think the hardest thing to get to, you know, when if you're trying to orange pill people is to kind of get across the spiritual qualities of Bitcoin or all these things you can get from Bitcoin that have nothing to do with sort of the gains. Mm. And probably in my own life, I've probably only had success probably showing people the gains. Very few people, it's one of the reasons I started the podcast, very few people wanted to talk about anything besides the gains or what, you know, even taking ownership or accountability for themselves or their money or their decisions or their wealth. And I think that's one of probably the hardest things to get across. I mean, even just like you were saying, it's like you buy a small amount of sats, your first sats, you even maybe if you move those to cold storage, you feel a level of freedom, I think, that you'd never felt before. And I think it lowers your time preference because if you understand Bitcoin, then you say one day these sats are going to be invaluable, and I just have to wait, right? At least, you know, if you don't have a lot, you can let time do the work for you with Bitcoin and just mathematically know that it's sort of a one-way street with inflation. But that's really hard to get across.
I agree, but I think that's a symptom of the times, right? Like getting rich quick without really doing anything or something, right? Or
the other side of that coin, like let's say Bitcoin, you know, you get to a point where sort of you get like you know, the violent minority, not the violent minority, but you know, the minority that kind of can steer the majority, right? I forget what he calls that, but so you get a strong enough minority and they kind of usher in that homogenous thing for everybody because it's ubiquitous now. And do we get to a point where people can skip even learning about Bitcoin, right? Just everyone gets the benefits of it. Are we going to like kind of cross a chasm where there are no Bitcoin, like there's no podcast for the dollar, right? There might be podcasts about how to like, you know, understand macro financial events. There might be a conference on how to, you know, use commercial deposits or bonds. Dollar-based instruments might have conferences and communities, but there's no conference or community that's just like, we love the US dollar. Maybe outside of the Federal Reserve. Right? Yeah. And so at some point it just becomes, even now I don't know how strong the cypherpunk community is, right? Like the internet just is. That doesn't mean the whole world is using it. Maybe only 70% of the world is using it. It's still getting adopted, but there aren't like conferences about how great the internet is.
Yeah, that's a good example, right? There are no internet conferences anymore. So I think the question is kind of like when won't there be any Bitcoin conferences anymore, right? Like when,
or does Bitcoin need sort of, because Bitcoin is very different in the sense of self-custody and these new principles and probably threatening forces, maybe it needs constant education to keep the spark alive, sort of thing, because it is like an idea in that sense, and humans are the project and need to keep it going. Maybe it's completely the opposite, and it's like the moment it stops being talked about and learned about, it dies. Yeah, and maybe it's that kind of force. I don't know.
I think that's an interesting thing to think about. I think you might be right that we need to constantly educate people on Bitcoin, or at least in a philosophical way, why a scarce money is the best money to adopt. But then again, yeah, I kind of see Bitcoin as a mirror, right? Just because it exists and in a certain way, this can never really die anymore. you know, the entire concept, or like how I don't know who talked about that first, but you know, like it's like chess, it's like math, it's like the rules of English grammar, right? Like that is what the Bitcoin protocol is. So in that sense, it cannot ever really die. I think how it's manifested now, you know, with all the miners, all the nodes, etc. Perhaps something can happen where that goes down, you know, whatever. I don't even know what kind of event would make that happen. But just conceptually, the idea of a money that's designed like this can never really die. And I think we probably do need to explain people for a long amount of time why these properties are important, because there will always be people that see an opportunity in trying to have a money in the market or in a country that they can control. I mean, that is what you see with CBDCs, or that whole discussion, for example, in Europe. Like, I think the whole CBDC project, I think conceptually already existed, but Bitcoin accelerated that development or research or whatever they are currently at. I don't think it's gonna work out, right? But I think it's still in research phase. I think it's gonna fail, but it doesn't really matter. Bitcoin created an incentive for them to accelerate that. And that tells me that Bitcoin is a great idea, right? The European Central Bank has reports saying Bitcoin doesn't have any value, and are just, you know, they're writing about it that it's fucking stupid. But why would you write about this random idea that was just released on a random internet forum 16 years ago? Because it doesn't mean anything, right? Like, do you know how many things are released on the internet every day? How many ideas are released on the internet every day? And this one, they decide to pay attention to, right? And so that shows me that there is something with Bitcoin that has merit, that gives it a place to exist in the world. And I think, like people like us, that I think are Bitcoin maxis, in a sense that we would defend this, or try to sit down with anyone to have a discussion about, you know, why do you think Bitcoin sucks? You know, tell me about your fantastic fiat money that you run. I think it should stay like that, or people that don't have a natural curiosity to understand why they use something, just like today with fiat money, right? They will forget that there is a perfect money. That's what I think. Or they will be, you know, bamboozled or impressed or whatever by someone with some sort of authority that will tell them that they have a better thing or whatever. And so I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but I do know that, like I said in the beginning, this is the biggest technological battle that could ever happen. And so this is going to take a lot of time, I think. And there's going to be a lot of literal battles. So imagine they brute force some sort of CBDC, whatever, in Europe. I think people will leave, for example, right? This will create something. Like Bitcoin started something that cannot really be stopped. So I'm not really sure what that future looks like, but I do know that it is a battle. I think Tuur de Meester uses the word war, actually. I don't know if it's a war, but I do know it's a huge battle, because if you have control over the most important technology in the world, and there's this thing that no one really owns, right, and cannot be destroyed, that is actually a threat to what you control, then obviously there's going to be some sort of friction there. So I think that education is extremely important. I don't know. I think with Bitcoin it's perhaps different than the internet. I think it's a fun thing to think about, but I think it probably never ends.
You bring up like Napster. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. They were wild. I mean, you can go into on America Online, you go into chat rooms, talk to kids from other towns.
But this is a good one. Did you know that at the top of Napster there was 15 million users, 15? That is the max amount of people that use Napster. That's not a lot.
Not a lot, but that's still probably about how many people own some Bitcoin.
I agree, but that's what I'm saying. That is small, but
Sure.
that's a good signal, right? It shows you that. Yeah.
I mean, you can get any song. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
my parents
crazy.
were like, why can't you use the phone? I'm downloading illegal music.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. I'm
Get off
halfway
the
through
computer.
97 songs here.
Yeah.
And you'd watch the bar go across.
Yeah.
And what was cool though is like you could do things outside the purview. You could use technology to make new connections, and for good or for bad. Meaning, like you could enter a world your parents, and I'm saying this for good or for bad, could not know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about with like I set my kid up with a little Bitcoin wallet, and it blows me away. I don't think he has money that he can use in ways I would never be able to track now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just think about like I try to think about like what is better for a 15-year-old kid or 13-year-old kid or a 17-year-old kid who wants to hide something from his parents. Doesn't even mean he's doing anything wrong. He just doesn't want his parents to know, maybe, or something, he or she. But like cash or Bitcoin, and in a lot of ways, Bitcoin I could only think would be better. Especially as you want to stuff a bunch of money in your locker, you just hide on your phone.
Yeah. But I think this is interesting because it's kind of where I wanted to go, because you mentioned cypherpunks. So I do think on one side we probably have to educate people for quite some amount of time, just because the fiat enchantment is so strong. But also with this example of Napster or just cypherpunk in general, those are very small groups. And for example, Napster is internet legacy, right? Like that is a cultural legacy to a degree. And I also think that the cypherpunk movement, which is smaller, already put their, how do you say that, like mark on the world by picking up, by creating and picking up Bitcoin and maintaining it and talking about it and philosophizing about it, and just bringing it further to a point where people less cypherpunk than them, less anarchist or computer nerd crazy or however you would want to define cypherpunks, could actually take it and run with it to the next person who is even less cypherpunk, right? Like, I mean, we see Bitcoin on Wall Street now, and I just think that is how it goes in general. I mean, the internet also, well, the internet started as a DoD project, right? Perhaps Bitcoin also started like that, but I think there's the same sequence from like ultra highly technical, people with very big visions about where something could go with the use of technology, to eventually, making it easier to use, more accessible, etc. Like nowadays, I don't know if you can explain TCP/IP to me. Like I couldn't explain it to you, right? But I'm still using it, and I'm still a profoundly better internet user than probably the majority of people. So there's always levels in this understanding, I think, of the technology that people are using. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it doesn't matter, and this is how it goes. So I'm thinking through it while I'm talking. But maybe this is the same with Bitcoin, like you said. Maybe in 20 years, like your kid or your kid's kid, for them Bitcoin is just logical. Yeah, of course it's Bitcoin. I don't want anything else, right? And maybe it's done then. So the education, I mean, then it's just
if you take the
permanent.
Napster sort of spawned the way we listen to music now, I think, through streaming. It's just it's all subscription or different ways. And I think that in a lot of ways has degraded the music industry and not been great for artists. Maybe, and if you follow that, so maybe the DoD started the internet, and then, whether they started Napster or like it just was created and out there and they squashed it and they got what they want. That kind of shows, like, I think they want to move Bitcoin into ETFs. They don't want us to use it as an economy, and they'll build the greater crypto around it for the greater people. But you would think that the young people, and not just young people, but if you think about Napster, that was 15 million people willing to break the rules.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Like they didn't, it was like, yeah, I want that music. I don't want to pay for it. I don't, lawful or unlawful, I'm going to do it my way and break the rules and get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, Bitcoin, I think there's similarities there that just aren't, I just don't feel like people are like into. Like Napster was cool in a way. Yeah, you know, it was like, oh, you got that on Napster. People weren't like haul his ass off to jail. They're like, all right, cool, that's cool. Can you get me my favorite album?
I mean, this is what I never understood from at least the artists that went against Napster. It's like, you should be extremely grateful that a random 15-year-old from a small town in the Netherlands actually found your music and loved it. How fucking sick is that?
And has no money to send you anyway,
Right? But
and no rent.
yes, so but it went from, there is a centralized control. So I do think Napster or this music or like having technology to kind of like break up this centralized control, right? So that is Napster, spawning a certain reaction by said industry, which is eventually adopting streaming, you know, saying like, oh, this is better because we have the analytics and we can pay you and whatever. And then all the artists are like, oh yeah, of course, I want to go back to centralization. Then now we are at a point where you know, the artists complain that Spotify is hijacking, you know, their music rights and the streams and whatever. And they're, you know, I saw Snoop Dogg had like a billion streams somewhere and got like 60K or something, you know, like that doesn't make sense. That, for me, it doesn't make sense. And now you're going back to, oh, look, I can be my own label. I can be my own artist. I can be an independent distributor. Right? So it's kind of like centralized, decentralized, centralized, decentralized, basically. And so perhaps with Bitcoin, we are only at the first part of decentralized. And the reaction it creates is, you know, this acceleration of CBDC talk and whatnot. I mean, you see Christine Lagarde, the president of the ECB, talk about China being an inspiration for their CBDC. Like, what the, you know, where are we in which movie? Basically, I don't know. Like that, it's just out of this world that she talks about it like that. But I think that spawns this centralized forced reaction. They're going to try something in some way, shape, or form. They're definitely going to try something, even forcibly, you know, politically trying to coerce countries in accepting that there's going to be, I don't know, something is going to blow up or go bad. And then people find this decentralization again, I would say. So perhaps there has to be a centralized type of reaction that spawned, and then people will realize that no, the decentralized solution is better again. But again, I think that takes years. Music is different than money, right? Like money is way deeper ingrained, and the whole spell, again, the enchantment of human is just way deeper ingrained. So I just think that takes a longer time, and that's also kind of like why I see this as a battle. But yeah, I think there are previous examples of similar ways that the technology kind of disrupted, you know, this centralized control, you know, spawning different types of reactions. So yeah, to go back to the original topic, I do think we're going to talk about it for a long time, and it's also something you should be able to defend, right? That's something that I've seen, that when they talk about CBDCs, they're going to be like, yeah, or well, they are like, yeah, it is digital. Everything nowadays is digital. Your life is going to be easier. That's literally their pitch, right? Like it's the dumbest of dumbest arguments that they're using to market this thing, right? And so I think we need to, as in everyone who is into Bitcoin, enable other people to actually understand that that is a dumb argument and that is not what's going to be given to you when you adopt the CBDC, right? Like I think what is so great about Bitcoin is that you can create a philosophical underpinning for a lot of argument, a lot of pro-Bitcoin arguments. You can go pretty deep with the philosophical arguments, right? And when I kind of like thought about that and then started looking at all the arguments for CBDC, or the euro is so amazing, or the European Union, and you know, like this monetary union is so amazing, all these arguments are flawed. Eventually, all these arguments are like, trust me, bro. You know, like we are the ECB. I am the leader of the ECB. You should trust me. I know what's best. I'm an economist, whatever. You know, I'm an expert. I have a PhD. And yeah, once you see that literally proof of work in Bitcoin is not only saying you have Bitcoin, like you are forced to be transparent. If you say I have 1 Bitcoin, I say show me, you say no, okay, I don't trust you. Like it is as simple as that. And in the fiat money world, the press conference that I referenced of the England Central Bank, they had some sort of admin snafu or something. I don't know. They had an emergency presser where they said like, yeah, there was something with some remodeling in the vault or the labeling, and something went wrong, but we'll fix it. And then there's like 3 questions from a journalist, and they're like, okay, we're good again. And so like in the fiat money world, people believe the talk because it comes from a certain authority or something. But Bitcoin, I think, is showing us that there is a mechanism, there is a system that actually forces all the participants to be transparent, or else those participants cannot gain any value from using this system. And for me, that is something that I find super intriguing, is that because that exists, it is never going away, because arguably we can argue that that is a better system compared to this other system. So I'm actually also happy that the whole CBDC trajectory is accelerated. And even today we saw a video of Lagarde, saying Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, blah blah. All that. That's great. That is great. Like let them dig their own hole with flawed arguments, and just let the randos on Twitter and LinkedIn and whatever, the Bitcoiners that figured it out, they can defend that to the end, basically, because we know what we're talking about. And there's a certain, again, philosophical underpinning that, if you're against that, well, good luck. Try to be anti-Bitcoin with a philosophical take, and see what happens. Like I'm sometimes on LinkedIn in the trenches, sometimes commenting or posting, and I see all these people that I don't know that are pro Bitcoin. They are all in these comments, just explaining, pictures, links, fucking PDFs, all these things. And so there's this whole decentralized social movement also globally, where people are connected through Bitcoin, and they're helping each other, battling all the philosophically flawed anti-Bitcoin crowd, which is also amazing. And that's that cooperative behavior, right? People understand that when they contribute to Bitcoin, they don't do that for themselves. They also do that for others, and they know that when others do that, it helps them as well. And I just think that's a truly fascinating system, and to see that and to experience that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I find that most people are more excited about AI, investing in AI, using AI, learning AI. They'll spend money on subscriptions to use it, download different. It's interesting to me that that's been a more like palatable form of new technology that people are really excited about. Do you think AI is compatible with Bitcoin, or a threat to Bitcoin from an energy standpoint, or anything like that?
No, I think super compatible. I think AI can probably not scale without Bitcoin, not only with regard to perhaps payments and stuff like that, but especially the energy part. I last week I actually recorded with Daniel Batten, who I think you also know, who's like really he was really against Bitcoin because of the energy use. He's like a climate tech investor, and he has a big fund that funds methane mitigation, which is a very bad pollutant, for example. And when he realized that Bitcoin mining is the only way to make renewable energy sources actually economically viable, right? Because they are the only type of computers that you can actually power off within a minute or power on within a minute to help stabilize a grid, or do the load balancing for energy networks. And you cannot really do that with AI. You cannot just turn off ChatGPT. That would be a bad user experience. So I see a lot of synergy actually between Bitcoin and AI on that energy and mining side, but also in terms of, okay, what does work look like in the future if the majority of people's jobs is going to be replaced? Well, accounting, for example, right? Like, what is that going to look like? Yeah, maybe not all accountants will go away, but probably 90% will. Okay, what are all these people going to do? I think those are very interesting things to just think about, because it's hard to, I think, visualize the future. But I do believe AI will usher in some sort of age of abundance. But how do you measure that prosperity, right? And this is a big thing, was a big thing for me in my journey understanding, and this is from Jeff Booth, right? Like that if technological progression is deflationary by nature, i.e., technology becomes more accessible, eventually cheaper, and eventually already, cheap, and everyone can use it. Which I think we're on our way with AI. I mean, there's open source AI models already, and I mean, every week there's like an immense amount of new announcements and developments and stuff like that. Okay, if there's a lot of productivity gains coming from this technological advancement, how do you measure them? And I think there's a great example actually in a video by Lynn Alden where she shows that these deflationary technological forces actually, crash into the inflationary money, fiat money that we price these technological advancements in. And when you then think about, okay, which side is winning if these two forces are clashing, right? I think the answer can be found in what does a bread cost today, right? Like a bread today is 4 or 5, money units, dollar, let's say, keep with dollars. And 50 years ago, bread was 20 cents. And so this I use sometimes with people. I say, like, do you agree that, do you think it's probable that in the past 50, 60 years, we've become better at making bread? Everyone says yes, right? And then they say, why? And then they say, well, I think the machines become better and we have computers and stuff like that. I say, yeah, okay, exactly. Okay, so you agree with that, right? Okay, yeah. So do you know the joke, right? That sometimes people say like, oh yeah, when my grandfather got bread for 20 cents. Do you know that people use that as a joke? And they're like, yeah. And then I ask, okay, how do you put those two together? How can we be better at making bread? But why is the bread like 20, 25, maybe even 30 times more expensive in the same money units today? And then, of course, people say, yeah, well, I don't really know. And that's kind of my in to talk about, the value of each money unit goes down. So you just need more units to pay for the same thing. And I think that is a really good example because it's just really basic, right? And I use the same, even dumber example is with apples. Like, do apples need more energy from the sun to grow in 2025 than in 1955, right? Like, there's no difference there. But you need more money units to buy the same amount of apples as in 1955, right? And so that shows you which side is winning. Which is a bad conclusion, right? The fiat money is winning. And so when you then think about, okay, how can we actually measure correctly the deflationary forces of this advancing technology? That should be done with a money that is stable in its value, that can never be devalued, right? It can never be debased, like no more units can be printed ever. And then I think the step to Bitcoin is very short. And so I do think about Bitcoin being a measurement of value in the future. I think that is the use case for Bitcoin, right? Like on my X profile, I have this header image that says 1 liter, 1 meter, 1 kilogram, 1 Bitcoin. Like, you can do watts and volts and whatever. Like, there is no standard measurement for economic value. And I think in order to have that, you need to have something that is an economic constant, like something that stays the same all the time. And I think that eventually is the entire promise of the Bitcoin protocol, right? Like of the rules of this digital money system. It's, I work like this, and all my incentives are, all the incentives for the people that contribute to this network, whether mining or running a node, are aligned to keep the rules like this. Because if the rules stay like this, then this system becomes predictable. And when it's predictable, it becomes trustworthy. And then more people want to adopt it and then eventually secure it and contribute to it. And that eventually is that flywheel that keeps the integrity of Bitcoin as a monetary network constant. And that is what you need to eventually have something that can actually measure economic value in a steady and way that best represents, you know, the progression. And I think that is what you're already seeing, right? So if you go to tradingview.com, for example, you could take any stock, you can denominate it in Bitcoin. They all go down. So the world becomes more affordable when you adopt the Bitcoin standard.
Speaking maybe of like measurements and constants, number go up. Is that the least important use case?
I think it's the most important marketing use case. And I think it is also well, one of the use cases for why people would adopt it, right? So I think it is the best way to get to know Bitcoin. But then when you actually understand why it goes up forever is, I think, when you adopt Bitcoin, right? So it's Max Kaiser who says fiat, Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom. I think that's a correct assessment and a quick summary of explaining why it will go up forever. It's because, yeah, Bitcoin has an absolute finite supply. And all the people that have adopted Bitcoin are incentivized to keep it like that, right? The incentive to create more is actually not interesting. Whereas in a fiat money system, it is actually mandatory, right? You need to create more units into perpetuity, infinitely, or else this entire thing basically breaks apart. So again, there's this mirror, right? Like there's this fiat money system that has to work like that, and there's this Bitcoin system that has to work basically the total opposite. And so why does the value of Bitcoin go up forever, basically? Well, if the people in the world if people either using AI or any other technology are going to be productive, and I think that's the case, right? I do believe that that's the whole point of what humans do in the world is we progress, we make things better, right? Like the bees have a task to do the pollination and make the honey, etc. That is what the bees do. I think what the people do is we progress, we make things better, we innovate, we become more efficient, etc. We're always doing that. So if that's always happening, and by use of technology that is accelerating, right? So productivity grows. Then if we have Bitcoin on one side and we have fiat money on the other side, as we talked about, fiat money, you can buy less. Even tomorrow, you can already buy less. You know, it's a tiny bit, but you can already buy less. Whereas with Bitcoin, once more people realize that this is something that cannot be debased, and it's verifiably the most scarce asset in the world that can be used as money, right? Like people say, like, well, one certain Picasso is the most scarce because there's only one, but you cannot use that as a global money, of course. That's when you kind of start seeing that if we start valuing things in Bitcoin as the only economic constant that exists in the world, that's going to be the thing that you need to own and work for. And I think we're now in a phase where people, sell their fiat money to buy Bitcoin, to save in Bitcoin, right? To save the wealth they already have in Bitcoin. And in the future, people are going to start asking for it as a reward in the value exchanges that they participate in. And I think that is going to accelerate it even further, but that is perhaps a few years out. But yeah, that's when people really start to leave the fiat money for Bitcoin. And because we cannot create more, that's why the value of each Bitcoin goes up, obviously.
Right. So maybe kind of a few more questions here. Are the millennials the luckiest generation ever?
That's a fun question. I think youth, yes. Adulthood, less. I think that's what we talked about, right? I think that's also why it's hard to comprehend for millennials that in their adult life they actually have a problem after growing up again, right? Like Western world, that's my perspective, growing up so freely with a lot of exciting things happening, prosperity, etc. Eventually, I would say yes. So we are the luckiest because we are also lucky to be alive in this time that we can actually do something about it with a certain edge, I'd say, in technology and the use of technology that perhaps older generations don't have. So that would be my answer. So yeah, we are lucky that we can actually possibly fix the huge problem that we have.
Is Bitcoin a cult?
If it was a cult, it would be the only cult where people tell each other to not listen to other people and think for themselves. So I think by that definition, Bitcoin is not a cult. I actually had a podcast. I have a podcast episode with a former cult member who emailed me and said, I listened to your podcast and sometimes people talk about Bitcoin being a cult. Well, I was in a cult and I can tell you that Bitcoin is the antithesis of a cult. And let's talk about it. So I have a whole, so if people go to my YouTube channel and search for the word cult, they can find that episode. And it's really interesting what he shares. So no, Bitcoin is not a cult. I think also that is a fiat argument by anti-Bitcoin people that say like, oh, all these people believe in the same thing. And they all say the same thing. And they all tell me that I don't understand and my arguments are stupid. That must be a cult. Yeah, sure. Keep thinking it's a cult. That's okay.
Is life a game?
Yes. A gift and a game.
Does Bitcoin fix the game?
No, I think that's a great question. No, I think Bitcoin actually enables you to play the game in a more conscious way because some of the rules or some of the circumstances are not influenced by other people that are no better than you.
Is money a spiritual thing?
Yes, very much, I would say.
Are we in a spiritual war?
Yes, very much, I would say. Yes. Yeah, I think this is I love this topic because I like what I just said. There are once I realized that all other organizations, all leadership in a country, every government, it's just other people. It's just other people that have not figured what this life, they haven't figured out what this life is about, right? They have the same ego, the same struggles, the same wishes, desires, wants, needs, challenges, personal issues, child traumas, whatever. And so some people are smarter than other people, but I think easily giving in to the fact that other people are more superior to you and therefore they should have some sort of privilege to rule over you, to be in charge of, in the context that we talk about money, in charge of a certain technology that they can design to benefit them and not you, right? I think is a spiritual crime in the sense that we are at a certain point now that too many people, I would say, because we collectively allow it, I think that's okay. And I personally don't think that's okay because, these are just other people. If we give these other people a certain authority over us to do things for us, then in my logical reasoning, I would like to see the receipts as to why we should give them certain privileges over us and what the benefit is that we get in return. And if that isn't clear, but they still want to be in charge and try to control us, then yeah, I would say there is at least a war of ideas going on. But eventually it is a spiritual war, because I personally believe that, I mean, we are all the same. We have different incarnations in this meat suit, but we are all the same. And I think having a technology in, the perceived reality that can help us align incentives and actually build and explore together sounds way more appealing to me than some sort of technocratic authoritarian future where other people know smarter, know better, not more deserving than me, are ruling over me. So fuck that. Yeah, I don't think that is something anyone should accept, right? And I think the outsourcing of thinking nowadays is something that is a huge symptom of this spiritual war. The fact that people are too afraid to think for themselves, whether they are right or wrong, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, I don't care if people think I'm wrong. That's okay, as long as we can talk about it and you can debate me or have a dialogue with me and show your, again, like your philosophical underpinning of what you believe. That's fine. I think that should be the goal. I think that is funny because I do think that's what we learned, when we talk about the Greeks, what we learned in high school when we talk about the Greeks, how they discussed and had this dialogue and all this dialectic, and that was how the democracy worked. But yeah, that's not what we're seeing today. So we're pretty far away from that, and it seems like no one really cares, which is a pity, and I think is also a motivator for me to just not stop talking about Bitcoin, because I do think Bitcoin, like I said, fixes these incentives and eventually fixes the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you think young people should be all in?
Yes, I think it would be great and very empowering when younger people realize that, like I said in the beginning, there is a certain problem that other people created for you, and it's up to you to figure that out. And they don't really care what you do, so you might as well go all the way. And for example, with Bitcoin, experience that there is a global network of a lot of like-minded, intelligent, curious, brave people that are adopting another money, not to the benefit of themselves, but actually to the benefit of also all the other people that adopt this money. And I think that could be a little bit scary or intimidating, right? Because of course you should trust all the people in charge, etc. But again, I do think that doing that in a conscious way, so understanding what you're doing is very important, right? So studying Bitcoin is very important. Understanding what you are getting into is very important. But I think, and so that is not easy. But on the other side of that, I think is a very freeing mindset that actually makes you more appreciative of life, I would say, more free, more in the now. And I think that is eventually what makes the quality of your life higher. And I think that going all in with that conviction based on study is probably the best risk-reward opportunity that any young person has today, because your future based on fiat money is definitely not is promised, but is definitely not existing. So you might as well just disregard it and adopt I think what I believe is the better alternative today. That will probably give you the best reward.
What do you say when people say, you know, Bram, I've listened to you. I love what you're saying. I get it. I want to live like you. I want to be like you. What does it take? How much Bitcoin do you have? What do you say to them?
Not enough. Yeah, no, I mean, eventually it doesn't really matter. Again, I think how much Bitcoin you have, you should have as much as you think you need. It's a good question. First answer is, by the way, be yourself. But if I trace back how I got here, I couldn't really identify all the steps, right? Like it's all these little steps. But I think my biggest advice would be just try to think for yourself. Try to really do the work so you can trust your own thinking and trust your own judgment. And then you will quickly see that many other people don't have that. And the amount you have to put in is shockingly lower than you might think upfront.
Love it. All right, 2 more. How has Bitcoin changed you? Maybe in a way you totally didn't expect, or some way you haven't covered tonight.
I think just kind of what I said now, just being way more conscious, living in the now. I used to have a lot of, I think, anxiety about the future, in a sense that, you know, like I said in the beginning, I was quite entrepreneurial. I'm not a hardcore entrepreneur, right? It's more like I have entrepreneurial tendencies. But there were also many times that I didn't try something, or I was too afraid to do it, or I had like super high expectations of when I actually attempted something, and then when I failed, I was super bummed about it, because I always felt like everything should work on the first try that I tried it. I don't even know why I thought about that. Like I felt a lot of pressure like towards the future, and now I actually feel way more in the now, like live in the now. Like I do think about the future, but it doesn't it doesn't have the hold on me that it had on me before. So I actually feel like I lowered my natural anxiety towards the future to actually appreciate all the things that I can experience right now. And that is something that I definitely did not expect, 12 years ago when I started day trading with my student friends trying to be rich or whatever. So I think that's something that has been really surprising. Yeah.
If you could orange pill anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Yeah. Okay. This is a corny answer, perhaps, but fucking Joe Rogan, dude, he needs to understand. He needs to understand what this is. He's so close. He's so close. And he had Antonopoulos on, who totally explained it to him. And he is just so close. And I really hope we can get someone who gets Bitcoin with like that amount of clout. Because I think there are an infinite amount of paths basically exist for Bitcoin to like be adopted in the world. But I do think there are some shortcuts along the way. I think Trump, whatever you think of Trump, is somewhat of a shortcut for Bitcoin. Because I think it's now politically unpopular to be against Bitcoin in the next election, right? It would be very dumb to be anti-Bitcoin on the Democrat platform, for example, now that Bitcoin is in like all these pension funds, etc. And so I think that was a little shortcut, but I think more someone that is part of shaping culture with cloud like Rogan. I think it should be Rogan. I think that. I think he would be someone that when he actually sees it, this is probably the only thing he talks about. And like all the things he finds interesting, I've listened to a lot of Joe Rogan, all the things he finds interesting, all the things that he's annoyed by, where he's like, why the fuck does it work like that? Or if it's about health or food or whatever, you can all trace it back to the money. It's like infinitely interesting. And he is an infinitely curious person. And so I think if he really gets it, I think this is the only thing that he's going to talk about, because he's going to put two and two together. I think Bitcoin is probably the biggest missing link for Joe Rogan to put all the stuff together that he finds interesting. And so, I think Joe Rogan would be a good shortcut for Bitcoin to kind of like take a big leap forward in adoption and awareness. Yeah,
we'll see. I don't think he ever does it. I think he stays away. I think that's kind of his role. I don't know, but Bram, this has been so dope. This has been incredible. I loved having you on. I'll leave it to you for any parting words and let people know where they can find you and your podcast and all your work.
Yeah, thanks for having the conversation. For me, it's always nice to be on the other side. It gives me a moment to frame and think about my own thoughts. So I hope it was somewhat coherent. But yeah, I'm happy to be by your side again. Thanks for the inspiration to start the podcast. And I know I'm going to continue with this for a very long time. And if people want to learn about what I'm talking about with regard to Bitcoin with people, they can search for Bitcoin for Millennials on Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, or on YouTube. My channel is called Bitcoin Bram, and I'm also very active on X, where I'm Bram K, so BRAMK.
You're doing great work. Keep it up. Thank you so much.
Thanks. You too. Thanks, brother.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Bitcoin Matrix. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below with any questions or thoughts you may have. We'd love to hear from you. You can support the show by checking out our sponsors and affiliate links in the description. It helps keep bringing you great content while connecting you with awesome products that I believe in. Share this episodes with your friends, family, or anyone curious about Bitcoin. And let's keep growing this community together. Stay curious, keep stacking, and I'll catch you in the next one.